Imagine, just for a second, that your organization is facing its absolute worst crisis. I mean, people are panicking, systems are failing, and it literally feels like the ground has completely vanished from beneath you. Let's be honest, right? Every organization will face a flood at some point. Not a metaphorical one, but a real, reality-shattering crisis. So the question isn't really whether the flood will come. The real question is, what kind of leader do you become when the waters actually start rising? Welcome to this explainer of the Dashavatara Management Framework.
Okay, so let's dive right into this. You're probably wondering, what could a 5,000-year-old fish possibly teach us about modern business continuity? Well, in Hindu mythology, Lord Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, takes 10 different forms across the ages to handle moments of extreme existential crisis. And you know what's fascinating? The very first one, appearing during the universe's first major threat, isn't some warrior in shining armor, it's simply a fish, Matsya.
Section 1. The Myth of Matsya. So, the story begins with a man named Manu. In the Vedic tradition, Manu is the first human. Essentially, you can think of him as the very first CEO of civilization. One day, while washing his hands in a river, he finds this tiny fish in his cupped palms. And incredibly, the fish actually speaks to him, asking for protection. Manu, moved by compassion, rescues the little fish and places it safely in a small clay pot. But then, a miraculous growth happens. The very next morning, the fish has grown way too large for the clay pot, so Manu moves it to a larger vessel, then to a tank, then a lake, and finally into the ocean itself. It just adapts and fills whatever space it's given. At this massive scale, the fish reveals its true identity. It is Vishnu. And he brings a dire warning. A great flood is coming, it's going to destroy everything, and it absolutely cannot be stopped.
Now, Vishnu gives Manu very specific instructions on how to survive this unavoidable disaster. He tells him to build a massive boat, but more importantly, he tells him to practice extreme triage. Notice, Vishnu doesn't say save the gold or save the palace, no. He says save these 3 critical elements, the 7 sages, who represent the world's knowledge, the seeds, representing the future capacity for growth, and the living creatures, the essential human capital. When the flood finally arrives, Vishnu, still in his fish form, guides this boat, which is safely tethered to the great serpent king, Vasuki.
Section 2. The Management Mirror.
Stepping out of that mythological ocean and straight into the modern corporate boardroom, the Matsya avatar offers us these ancient, timeless leadership truths that are honestly just as applicable today as they were 5 millennia ago. Truth number 1. The flood is not the problem. Look, Manu didn't cause the flood, and he absolutely couldn't stop it. It was completely beyond his control. Most leaders in a crisis make the fatal mistake of wasting all their energy trying to somehow control or deny the flood itself. The Matsya lesson here is incredibly simple. Accept the flood. Your job isn't to prevent the reality of the crisis. Your job is to navigate your organization safely through it.
Truth number 2. Know what must be saved. So the absolutely crucial point here is brutal triage. Remember those instructions to save the sages and the seeds? In a real crisis, you have to ask yourself what is truly irreplaceable, what literally cannot be rebuilt later. The companies that survive, they don't try to save everything. They fiercely protect their core institutional knowledge and their human capital over easily replaceable assets.
Truth number 3. The guide must show up before the flood. Notice that Vishnu didn't wait for the skies to open up. He appeared early as a tiny fish in Manu's hands. Great leaders do exactly this. They aren't just reactive, waiting for disaster to strike. They spot the anomaly in the data, the small fish, the uncomfortable trend, and they begin preparing quietly and diligently the very moment they sense that anomaly, long before anyone else even notices.
Truth number 4. Adapt your form to the need. Why a fish? Well, because the crisis was an ocean. To navigate water, you need a fish, not a heavily armored warrior. A crisis demands a totally different form of leadership from you. You can't just insist on being the exact same leader you were in normal, peaceful times. Sometimes you need to become smaller, quieter, and highly operational. You literally must adapt your form to exactly what the moment requires.
Truth number 5. The destination exists beyond the flood. Vishnu guided the boat toward a new shore, not just away from danger. As a leader, you have to hold the harsh reality of the current crisis while simultaneously providing a crystal-clear vision of the shore. Because if your team cannot see that a destination exists beyond the suffering, they won't just struggle, they will completely fall into despair. Section 3. Real-world case study.
Let's ground this ancient wisdom in some recent reality. Think back to early 2020.
The global pandemic was a literal modern flood that completely shut down the global economy, right? Well, while many companies scrambled, froze, or just panicked, Zoom acted exactly as the boat guided by Matsya. When the flood hit, they made quick, clear decisions. They didn't pivot to 50 new experimental products. Instead, they tethered themselves to their core mission: reliable infrastructure and free-tier access for schools. They essentially doubled down on being the reliable boat that people so desperately needed well before the waters fully rose.
And the business facts here are just staggering. To put it into perspective, because they adapted their form to scale exactly as the crisis required, Zoom grew from 10 million daily users in December 2019 all the way to 300 million daily users by April 2020. I mean, wow. They built a boat, they knew exactly what to protect, and they adapted their form right to the need.
Now compare that Matsya-style leadership, building the boat and adapting your form, against the alternative. Companies that actually tried to stop the flood, operating in total denial, refusing to change, and protecting all the wrong things. Many of those companies just no longer exist today. You can't fight a flood. You just can't. You can only build a boat and know exactly where you're going.
Section 4. Takeaways and Reflection.
So we've traced a line from ancient Vedic texts directly into modern management strategy. Here is your quick recap to really anchor these 5 core principles of the Dashavatara Management Framework into your own leadership philosophy. 1. Accept the flood. Don't waste your energy fighting reality. 2. Know your sages and seeds, and protect those irreplaceable assets above absolutely everything else. 3. Read the signals early. Pay close attention to the small fish. 4. Adapt your form to whatever the crisis demands of you. And 5. Hold the vision and always, always keep the destination visible for your team. Now, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative reflection. Think back to the last major crisis you faced. Which of those 5 Matsya principles did you use instinctively? And, perhaps more importantly, what did you miss? Take a real moment to consider that. Because while the flood always passes, the boat you build determines who actually survives it.
Section 5. The next challenge.
But what happens when the waters finally recede? Well, our next challenge pivots the narrative entirely. How do you lead when there's no sudden flood, but instead an endless, grinding, completely invisible effort? You know, when the mountain just keeps sinking and no one even notices the person holding it up? That is the exact challenge we'll be tackling next time in Episode 02, Kurma, the Invisible Leader. This explainer series of the Dashavatara Management Framework is created by Upendra Agnihotram. If this brought you value today and helped structure your thinking, please share this ancient wisdom with a leader who might need it. Until next time, keep your eyes on the shore.